This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Chris, do you know what happens when you Google Shaboozey's monster hit, a bar song, Tipsy?
You don't just get the music video at the top?
No, your whole search result tips side to side.
No, seriously?
Yeah.
Good Lord. Someone pour me up a double shot of whiskey. They know me and Jay Dale's got a history.
Chris Molanphy is the guy I want to call up to talk music. He hosts the podcast Hit Parade.
I can't believe I haven't tried that. That's amazing.
Here comes the 2 to the 3 to the 4. Tell them bring another round. We need plenty more. Two-stepping on the table.
To me, it's like a sign of how much this song has taken over the last year. It's become just a thing. So much of a thing that my teenage son is like, I hate this song. Please don't listen to this song.
Yeah, it's a big, big-ass hit.
Everybody at the bar getting tipsy.
It is currently tied for the all-time record on the Billboard Hot 100, the flagship pop chart in America, with Old Town Road by Lil Nas X featuring Billy Ray Cyrus, which spent also 19 weeks at number 1 back in 2019.
It's so interesting to me that like this hit, it's a huge hit and it's tying another Black country song.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. And I'll be honest, I wrote a book about Old Town Road a couple years ago for the Singles series that Duke University Press publishes, not to hype my book. And I only bring it up because I'm kind of invested in Old Town Road. I wrote a book not only about the chart record that song set, but the fact that it is a country song by a young Black man that fused together multiple audiences. And that's what Shaboozey is doing.
Yeah. I mean, in your book about Lil Nas X and his 2019 hit Old Town Road, you predicted a new wave of Black crossover in country music. Is Shaboozey basically fulfilling your prediction?
He is, but I feel like my prediction is sort of half-assed and I shouldn't be taking that big a victory lap because I could not have foreseen the weird cross-section of circumstances that led to this song existing.
Today on the show, why 2024 was Shaboozey's year. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around.
Support comes from USA for UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. This winter, your gift to USA for UNHCR will make all the difference. As temperatures drop, your generosity brings critical relief to those forced to flee and facing winter far from home. Your gift to UNHCR gives core relief items like food, blankets, shelter, and fuel for heaters. These life-saving essentials are quickly transported to warehouses around the globe, ready to be delivered by UNHCR's dedicated teams. It's a race against time to provide more than just the basics for those in need. UNHCR's swift response, fueled by your support, ensures refugees and displaced people receive life-saving aid, helping them survive the harshest conditions. UNHCR is committed to using every dollar wisely and turning your compassion into action. Help those in need stay warm and safe. Your gift is matched for a limited time. Give now at unrefugees.org/winter.
This episode is brought to you by Public.com. Interest rates have fallen, but you can still lock in a 6% or higher yield with a bond account at Public.com. That's a pretty big deal, because when rates drop, so can the interest rate you earn on your investments. A bond account allows you to lock in a 6% or higher yield with a diversified portfolio of high-yield and investment-grade corporate bonds. So, while other people are watching their returns shrink, you could be earning regular interest payments. But a yield is not locked in until you invest, so check it out. The good news is it only takes a couple of minutes to sign up at Public.com. Lock in a 6% or higher yield with a bond account. Only at Public.com/whatnext. Brought to you by Public Investing, member FINRA and SIPC. As of September 26, 2024, the average annualized yield to worst across the bond account is greater than 6%. Yield to worst is not guaranteed. Not an investment recommendation. All investing involves risk. Visit public.com/disclosures/bond-account for more info. Can we talk about who Shaboozey is? Like maybe start with what's his real name and how did he start going by Shaboozey?
Sure. So one of the things I love about Shaboozey starts with his name, because if you look him up, if you look for a bar song on Google, you will see that it's recorded by a guy who calls himself Shaboozey. But his actual name, his birth name, he is Nigerian American. He was born in Northern Virginia, is Collins Obinna Shaboozey, Chibueze. So basically, he's got this Nigerian name that he playfully turned into Shaboozey with the word booze in the middle of it. And I find that extremely cheeky. There's, a great tradition of pop and rap stars, adapting their names into, fun rap monikers, but Shaboozey has got to be one of the better ones. And he grew up listening to both hip hop and country music. And he was basically trying to figure out a way that he could cross-pollinate the Kenny Rogers records that his father was playing when he was growing up with his own interest in hip hop. He actually nearly completed a country album as far back as the mid-10s, but he didn't release it.
Why?
Because he was convinced the world wasn't ready for a black kid, mixing twang and trap beats. And frankly, half a decade before Old Town Road, he was probably right about that. So instead, he kept releasing kind of straight up rap records, but with a wink, he would kind of infuse them with country iconography. For example, he named one of his rap songs after NASCAR driver Jeff Gordon. Or, after he signed to a major label in the late 10s, he started sneaking country tropes into his rap. He released a 2018 album called Lady Wrangler, which was mostly a trap-style rap LP, but it did lead off with, this song Dream that had, kind of high lonesome guitar that sounded country-esque. He released a 2022 album called Cowboys Live Forever, Outlaws Never Die. It was still rooted in hip hop, but it featured tracks with titles like The Ballad of Belt Buckle Bill or Rodeo World Champion or Why Can't Cowboys Cry?
Were these songs good?
Yeah, but through all this, he was still sort of categorized, and this, by the way, is important for Billboard purposes, as fundamentally a hip-hop artist. What makes his story in 2024 so remarkable is that he releases an album called Where I've Been Isn't Where I'm Going, and he is going straight country. He's actually working with instrumentalists in more of a country tradition. The songs read as country music, and even when he's sneaking in hip-hop tropes, they play to the country crowd, and they are tagged on streaming services and for Billboard purposes as country music, which means that his album and the songs are allowed to chart on Billboard's country charts. It's country album chart, it's hot country songs chart, and that makes a huge difference.
It sounds like a risk too, right? Because country music charts haven't been especially welcoming to Black artists. necessarily. And so it's like both it's an opportunity and a risk.
Well, and we have to talk also about the tangled history of how music by Black performers has played on the country charts. Because, dating all the way back to the early 60s, I talk about this in my book about Old Town Road. You've got Ray Charles releasing an album called Modern Sounds in Country and Western Music, and he's using what were then called Nashville-style arrangements. And yet country radio didn't play it. It wasn't allowed on Billboard's country charts. Over the decades, Black artists who've wanted to play country music have had to really toe the Nashville line. So whether it's Charlie Pride in the 60s and 70s or Darius Rucker in the late aughts, they work with country songwriters, they record with country instrumentalists from, Nashville. They kind of play it straight up the middle.
I didn't know there were this many gatekeepers involved.
Oh, yeah. I often joke that country music is the only form of music like punk rock that is this gate kept. People saying this is country, that ain't country. This is punk, that ain't punk. It's really very carefully policed. And that's what befell Old Town Road. What happens to Lil Nas X in 2019 is that he creates this song out of a 9 Inch Nails sample of all things that kind of sounds like a banjo. And he tags it on streaming services as both hip hop and country and pop music. And Billboard for 1 week allows Old Town Road onto its country chart, but then kind of folks in Nashville complain to Billboard and Billboard yanks it from the country chart after only 1 week. And so as much of a blockbuster as Old Town Road was, it was basically not allowed to compete on the country chart. Now, flash ahead to 2024, when Beyoncé released Cowboy Carter and she drops the song Texas Hold'em, it was an open question whether, for a few days, it was settled pretty quickly, whether Billboard would allow it on its Hot Country Songs chart. And because Billboard for the last decade, basically in the digital era, has had this methodology where if a song is tagged as country, all of the consumption, flows into the Hot Country Songs chart. Beyonce's Texas Hold'em went to number 1. It actually debuted at number 1 on the Hot Country Songs chart. But that was a bit misleading because actually Texas Hold'em was heavily consumed by a pop audience, but the country audience was much warier about Beyoncé. Infamously, when Beyoncé appeared on the CMAs about 7 years ago to perform her song Daddy Lessons with the Chicks, there was not an embrace of Beyoncé at that award show and not an embrace of Daddy Lessons at country radio. And frankly, that whole contretemps is why Beyoncé may have recorded Cowboy Carter in the first place.
So why is it different for Shaboozey?
That's a good question. I think it's because in a way that Texas Hold'em doesn't, a bar song, Tipsy, reads to the country audience as straight up country music.
He seems to be a lover of the genre, too. He's not coming in with any sense of being an oppositional force. He just seems to genuinely, if you look at the video for a bar song, Tipsy, it's a bunch of white guys in cowboy hats behind him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, frankly, it could be a Morgan Wallen video, if not for the presence of Shaboozey. I totally agree with you. I also think that Shaboozey comes in this year with less baggage than Beyoncé does. Beyoncé rightfully had a chip on her shoulder when she recorded Cowboy Carter. She said it in, her statement when she released the album about how the album was inspired by an incident where she didn't feel welcome. And most people read that as a thinly veiled reference to the CMAs, in the mid-10s. And I think the country audience received Texas Hold'em as somebody, pardon the expression, carpetbagging in country music, whereas Shaboozey comes at this. He's never really had major hits before. And his interest in the genre, I guess, seems a little more genuine to the country crowd. And they embraced it in a way they didn't embrace Texas Hold'em.
Okay, but before we make ourselves feel too good about this kumbaya of Black musicianship and country music, we should talk about the 2024 Country Music Awards, because Shaboozey was nominated for a couple awards, I believe. Beyoncé was totally shut out.
Yep.
What happened when Shaboozey turned up to be in this audience and like potentially get an award?
Yeah, well, first of all, he not only didn't get any awards, which is not that surprising. I'll go with the more obvious explanation that he is a brand new artist, and brand new artists tend to not do that well in their first year on an award show like the CMAs. But his name kind of became a punchline that night. Like, several performers were invoking him from the stage almost as a laugh line.
Like saying stuff like, holy Shaboozey, and like, that's a shadoozy.
It takes an army of people to make a great record, but I gotta tell you, this is for this cowboy who's been kicking Shaboozey for a lot of years, y'all. Cody Johnson.
It kind of othered him in a way that was not a good look in a year when, you know, country music was already excluding Beyoncé entirely. And, you know, Shaboozey took it in stride wisely. You know, he didn't make a federal case out of it himself. But yeah, it definitely indicated that the song has been embraced by country audiences, but, you know, the jury is still out as to whether Shaboozey, the person, is being fully embraced by the country audience.
We'll be right back after a quick break.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today? Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices, and that's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies, so you can save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states and situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
This episode is brought to you by Discover. It's always nice to get more for less. So here's a life hack that can automatically put some extra cash in your pocket. Discover will automatically double all the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. So you could get some money for this holiday season and get more next holiday season. It pays to Discover. See terms at discover.com/creditcard. Whether Shaboozey is totally welcome in country circles remains to be seen. But the thing is, country fans aren't the only ones behind a bar song Tipsy's success. Because even though this song has a distinctly country sound, the influence of hip-hop is baked right into this tune. Specifically, the Jaquan song, Tipsy, from back in the 2000s.
The homage to this 20-year-old Jaquan rap song is not subtext, it's text. He's literally quoting it in the verse. For those who don't remember, back in 2004, there's an artist named Jaquan. He's a St. Louis rapper. He's got a #2 hit on the charts at a moment of, you know, peak hip-hop dominance on pop radio called Tipsy. And as I said in my Slate article, he sounds like a sloshed Muppet. He's basically counting. Here comes the 1 to the 3 to the 4.
Everybody out on the dance floor. Baby girl ass jiggle like she want more.
It's kind of crunk music for teeny boppers.
It's a total bop. Like, I was not familiar. And I listened and I was like, this is delightful. I'm enjoying myself.
Back now, you don't get none. Everybody in the club get tipsy.
Oh, yeah, no, I loved that record back in 2004. I put it on my summer mix back then. And it's had kind of a long life. And among the people who loved it was, you know, young Collins Shaboozey, who, you know, heard it when he was, you know, a tween and basically turned it into a country record. And one of the things I love about a bar song, Tipsy, is that it reminds us that celebrating, you know, drinking is kind of a tradition in both hip hop and country music. It's a party record, but it's a party record with a mournful side to it. You know, he sings about things like this 9 to 5 ain't working. Why the hell do I work so hard?
It's kind of like a song about inflation. Like, there's a little bit of a, like, I can't afford the Birkin bag my girl wants sort of thing.
Exactly. So it's weirdly timely for 2024, and it manages to kind of call back to this hip hop record that all audiences have nostalgia for.
Yeah. I mean, the song is really doing these three things at once. It's fully embracing country, it's fully embracing hip hop, and then it's fully embracing the economic moment and where folks are. And to me, that's kind of the magic of the song, I think, that and like it's just fun to sing. It's like this sort of marriage of all these things where you're finding commonality in these disparate elements.
Exactly. And that, I think, is kind of the audience that has latched onto a bar song, Tipsy. It's an audience that does not see country music and hip hop music as all that far apart. And the fact that Shaboozey figured out a way to fuse these two musics into one song, you know, just at a data level, you're combining two audiences, you know, and Billboard has pointed out that a bar song has crossed over at radio formats that no song has crossed over before. It went top 10 on not only the pop radio chart, not only the country radio chart, as I said before, but, you know, also it went top 10 on rhythmic radio, which is basically a form of radio that plays a mix of R&B, dance, and hip hop music. And, you know, adult pop radio, which is kind of like adult contemporary with, you know, current records. So basically, folks across the age spectrum, the racial spectrum, the cultural spectrum are listening to this record, and it's getting, you know, sort of saturation airplay across the board.
Yeah. There's one element of Shaboozey's success that I wonder if we can dwell on a bit. Mm-hmm. And that's basically how his song became a hit. Because I think you might expect that, okay, if this is someone who's a not typical country artist, maybe they came from the internet and that's really what drove their success. That's not my understanding of what happened here. Like, this was a country radio success. So I want to talk about why and what actually went on.
Well, it wasn't really a record that broke via TikTok. It's done well at TikTok. So, you know, there have certainly been, you know, thousands of videos involving a bar song, but it's not a meme hit per se by itself. You know, it's not a thing where, you know, a squeaky sound or a strange line sort of took off on TikTok and made it a hit. The big reason why it's held on at number one for 19 weeks overwhelmingly is radio. And what I like to say about the Hot 100 and why I think it's an interesting chart is that it averages what I call active fandom and passive fandom.
Okay, what? What?
Yeah, all right. Active fandom is basically sales and streams. It's folks deciding, I need to hear this song right now. I'm paying for it or I'm streaming it. And then there's passive fandom, which is basically the radio. It's like, do you flip the station when this song comes on? And for months now, folks at various radio formats have not been flipping the station when a bar song comes on. I think you could see this when Shaboozey was the musical guest on Saturday Night Live a couple of weekends ago. And he actually played a bar song second. It was in his later slot. And the minute the first few strums of that song started, you know, the audience hooted and cheered because everybody in that audience knew it, you know, the young and the old, because it's been everywhere for months. And folks who don't necessarily pay attention to very current pop, they know this song. This song is basically a Roadhouse sing-along that unites multiple audiences. And that's why it's been number one for 19 weeks.
It's interesting because you've talked about how you can see this success a couple of ways. Like, I think it's interesting to you that this really isn't about the TikTokification of music, especially because with Old Town Road by Lil Nas X, he sort of had to like break down the door through the internet to become a hit. And that's not really what happened here. But at the same time, you've also said what this reveals, what Shaboozey's success reveals, is a kind of malaise on the radio where it's like once you get on the radio, it's kind of hard to get off because they're just like, all right, we'll play that one again.
Well, radio ratings have been way down for the last half decade. And, the pandemic really did a number on radio because folks are not commuting as much, so they're not in their cars as much. Streaming has obviously taken off and supplanted radio for a lot of listeners. And so radio has gotten ever more cautious. If a record connects with an audience, they'll just keep playing it for months on end. And, this year it was Shaboozey's turn. That record just caught on with the radio audience and has not let go. And radio programmers are just not as adventurous as they used to be. If they've got the research that shows that a record is connecting with their audience, they're just going to play the hell out of it. And, to some extent, you can't blame them at a moment when radio feels under siege. For all sorts of philosophical reasons, I continue to believe that radio is a valuable contributor to the Hot 100. I would not want to see radio pulled from the Hot 100 because I think the passive audience, the audience that's just listening to whatever radio serves up, and do they stay tuned in or do they not? I think you want to know what that audience likes because it tells you a lot about the staying power of a hit. The active fan, the one who has to buy a new Drake record in the first week or a new Taylor record in the first week. That's interesting as far as it goes, but it doesn't necessarily tell you whether that record will cling on forever and ever. The passive audience is kind of the truth serum of hit making. It tells you, all right, when I hear a song on the radio, am I going to flip the station or am I just going to kind of enjoy it? Those are the records that tend to hang on forever.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about the CMAs, which were just last month, but it won't be long before we're talking about the Grammys, which are in February. Shaboozey's going to be up for Best New Artist and Song of the Year, in addition to some country-specific awards. What are his odds going into this? I can't help thinking about Lil Nas X back in 2020. He was up for 6 Grammys for Old Town Road. He did not win 6 Grammys. He won 1, I think.
He won 2, as best as I can tell. He won Best Pop Duo Group Performance, and he won Best Music Video, rightfully, because the music video is delightful. But yeah, he, didn't exactly sweep the Grammys. Grammy's going to Grammy. We're still waiting for Beyoncé to win Album of the Year, and, that's the big betting line for the 2025 Grammy Awards. Is she finally going to take Album of the Year for Cowboy Carter? The competition against Shaboozey is pretty stiff in, Best New Artist and Song of the Year. I would not be surprised if he went away empty-handed, based more on the competition than on acceptance of Shaboozey. But, it's still, the jury is still out over whether Shaboozey's career is going to go much beyond a bar song. He is trying to find a follow-up hit right now. And, it hasn't taken hold yet, but mostly that's because a bar song has kind of sucked all the air out of the room, and it's kind of the only Shaboozey song as far as most people are concerned. So the story for Shaboozey is still, largely unwritten. On the other hand, if I may speak up for Lil Nas X turned out to be much more than a one-hit wonder. He scored multiple #1 hits in 2021, a couple of years after his big moment, with songs like Montero and Industry Baby.
Yeah, he really knows how to internet.
Exactly. I often joke that Lil Nas X's genre is neither pop nor country nor necessarily even hip-hop. It's internet. He just kind of knows how to make things go viral. That's his great skill set. Shaboozey is a different kind of artist. He's trying to kind of cross-pollinate genres and be a little bit of everything to everybody. And that's kind of hard. So I don't know what that means for him in 2025 and beyond, but I think it's too soon for us to write Shaboozey off if it was too soon for us to write Lil Nas X off in 2019. So I'm hopeful for him.
Chris, I'm so grateful for your time, for coming on the show. I have so much fun listening to you and reading you. So thanks.
Thank you, Mary. And I'm a huge fan of What Next, so it was a delight to make this appearance. Thank you.
Chris Molanphy is a chart analyst, pop critic, and the host of the Hit Parade podcast. He also writes Slate's Why Is This Song Number One series. And that's our show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, and Madeline Ducharme. We are led by Alicia Montgomery. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. and I'm Mary Harris. You can go track me down on Blue Sky if you'd like. I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.
When you're part of a military family, you understand sacrifice and support. At American Public University, we honor your dedication by extending our military tuition savings to your extended family. Parents, spouses, legal partners, siblings, and dependents all qualify for APU's preferred military rate of just $250 per credit hour for undergraduate and master's level programs. American Public University. Value for the whole family. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.